Thank you again for presenting me. My name is Camilla, and I'm a GovTech expert in Lisbon Council, and I'm also a co-founder and a board member, and I'm leading this global GovTech experts network called GovTech Global Alliance. And I'm in this field. I started in this field in 2018 when I was working in the Ministry of Education and decided to create the first app to support kids to report bullying in schools anonymously. So it's been a journey. And after that, I worked in the GovTech Lab in the Innovation Agency in Lithuania, and I worked with also many governments inside, like I worked inside the public sector and many governments around the world doing that in the public sector. So you are not my usual audience. I mostly speak to the governments, to the public sector officials, but due to that, I know and I learned a lot about how public sector operates. So this session is about helping you to understand this world and to decide if this market is worth your time. And I hope at the end of the presentation, you'll decide that it is. And feel free to pop the questions in the chat. I don't know if I'll be able to look at them while I'm presenting. I have quite many things to share, but feel free and we're gonna try finding some time at the end of this presentation to answer those. So just so you understand what this presentation will be about, we're going to be talking what GovTech is, how the public sector works, where are the real opportunities and what works and what doesn't. But before we start, I would love to learn who do we have in the room. So if you could raise your hands if you're a founder. Let's see how many we have. Quite some. Yeah, I'm operating on 2 screens, so don't, like, if I want to see the conversation, I need to look. Okay, so we have more than 20 founders. If you could lower your hand. If you're an early stage startup, maybe it's the same. Maybe you still need to have your hand raised. So early stage startups, not that many. Oh no, around. Oh, more and more coming up. So yeah, around 20, around 30 here. If you're a scaling company, if you consider yourself a scaling company, so we have a bit less than early stage startups. And if you're an SME, if you consider yourself an SME, small or medium enterprise, not that many. And if you're just exploring or you're from public sector, I know that also some people from public sector, you can also raise your hand. Okay, so thank you for that. Yeah, we have many explorers here in this room as well. So just to start with, I want to start with provocative question. What is your first association with the public sector? So you can join the Slido through the website, or you can scan the QR code. And I would love to hear what is the first word which pops into your mind when thinking about public sector. And please be open and honest. Let's, I see that people are joining and typing. Yeah, we see bureaucracy, slow sales cycles. This is something I'm gonna be talking about for sure in this inefficiency. Slow decision-making processes I see in the chat. Inefficiency, slow, bureaucracy, slow, I see slow a lot. And this is actually how it's how it looks. Public goods, lobbying, responsibility, caring, big opportunity. This I really like this answer. Yeah, so I see slow mentioned, and complex, mentioned several times, slow decisions, big opportunities, inefficiency, bureaucracy. Thank you for that. I'm going to move to another thing, with another slide now. You can still type, but I see, like, I think we see the picture. So let's be honest, public sector is bureaucratic, is slow, it can look hard to access, and it's quite complex. And most of it is true, but it's incomplete. So why, while you're still mentioned all those things, so why are startups still entering this market? And also you are in this meeting. So let's try exploring this. So I'm going to start with what GovTech is. This is the word you'll be hearing a lot. Also, our project is called GovTech4All. You may have heard it earlier, but just so we are all on the same page, I'm going to explain what it is. It's a more narrow term than the digital public services or like digital government. It's about the intersection of different public sector challenges and different public sector topics and the emerging technologies which can help solve those problems public sector is facing. So technologies like artificial intelligence, algorithms, Internet of Things, blockchain, many other things. So this is the technology, innovative technology for the public sector, for services for citizens, tools for institutions, and the infrastructure. And why GovTech matters? GovTech government is one of the largest service providers in the world. They serve millions of people. There is an increased pressure to digitalize, and actually governments were one of the last ones on this train, unfortunately, when in comparison to business, who started digitalizing. And citizens expect the same level of service that they get from the private companies. We need just a few seconds or a few clicks to order taxi, pizza, groceries, do a bank transfer. So business is actually offering us many very user-friendly, very fast, very convenient services, and we expect the same from the government. So the demand for better technology is not optional, and it's constant and growing, and public sector feels that a lot. And this is not a niche market, and it's reflected in the market size. So those are the numbers from World Economic Forum report in 2024. So this market will grow from around $600 billion in 2024 to $1.5 trillion in 2034. So it's more than, so this market will grow more than twice in just 10 years. And we're talking, and it's close to 10 trillion in potential public value. So despite the perception we saw earlier, it's a very large and growing market, actually. And major investments are focusing on citizen-centric services and its delivery, so around 85%. Those are the numbers from the same report. Automation and AI. So if your solution touches on any of those, you're already aligned with where governments are spending. So that's the key point I want you to take from this section. This is one of the largest markets that many startups simply don't understand, which means there is an opportunity, but also a knowledge gap. So at this point, a fair question is why startups? Why do we need startups at all in this ecosystem? Because governments are already working with large companies, with academia, with NGOs. So why to add another player and another group? So I want you to give a few reasons. First, I want to talk about two types of innovation. And organizations, every organization, also public sector, needs to balance between both of them. So incremental innovation is improving things step by step, making existing processes slightly better. And that's essential. And this is something public sector is actually quite good at. They're making those small changes we see in the bureaucracy, how to do some things, maybe a bit faster, a bit better. But that's not enough. Organizations also need exploratory innovation, and this is about improving something not by 10%, but about doing something completely different, and not just going one step forward, but sometimes 1,000 steps at once, and maybe in completely different direction. And this is where the startups come in. So startups don't usually optimize existing processes. They question them, they rethink them, and they build completely new ways of doing things. And this is exactly what public sector often lacks internally. So the second reason is skills and expertise. Startups are often on the edge of technology. You know that the best. They understand what is possible today and also what is coming next. And the public sector simply cannot always attract and retain the level of talent the startups are able to, due to the budgets, due to different things, due to bureaucracy, which was already mentioned as well. So there is a gap. Public sector does not have large AI and data teams or like IT teams, and startups are specialized and focused. So collaboration is not optional for the public sector, it's necessary. And from that expertise comes ideas, because startups understand technology deeper. They can propose solutions that public sector wouldn't come up with on their own. And I'm going to share just one example, which I really love. So I think it was 2017 or 2018, where Scottish Environmental Protection Agency was looking for a way how to inform citizens living in rural areas about the flooding coming. So they have a lot of rural small villages which are quite far from the bigger cities. And before that, they had to, like, when they learned that the river levels are rising, they needed to go to that village and inform people that they need to evacuate. And they were looking for a way how to make this system more effective. And what public sector usually does in this case, they put this huge several million euros procurement with many technical specifications, very detailed ones, and buy this big systems. But Scottish Environment Protection Agency decided to go to GovTech program, which is called CivTech Scotland, and they put it as an open question. So how can we develop an effective hyper-local system to detect flooding and allowing to warning people and give them time to prepare? And there was this one man who didn't even have the startup at that time, but he thought about, what if we put this small thing everyone has in their car called Parktronic, and you see it in the first photo. So this is this small thing which costs several euros. What if, and which starts beeping when the car is parking. When it's approaching the wall. What if we put it like this, so when the river level is rising, it can start sending some signals? And it actually was a very cheap system. And they added to that also small monitors for elderly to put in their houses, which they can see the level of the river. And if the level is rising, this monitor starts beeping, or you get the notifications from the app that you need to prepare for evacuation. So this is one of my favorite examples of how innovation can come to public sector, and it won't have any chance to come if public sector would use like traditional systems and traditional procurements. So there is a real value in diversity of perspective, and different ways of thinking lead to better solutions. And solutions serve all of us. We are all citizens, so it's all those all things are we are, as people, interested in public sector getting better. And startups bring very different mindset into the room. And we saw that also clearly during COVID, where there was a need for fast and creative solutions, and startups were able to respond and deliver. And I think it was the first wave where we saw this collaboration between public sector and startups, because public sector and its processes were too slow for that. So the question becomes, why we don't continue this? So this might sound straightforward. Startups are valuable, governments need them, so it should be easy to work together, right? Unfortunately, it's not. So now I'm going to be talking about how public sector works. But before that, I want to give you another chance to share. I'm curious to see what feels like the biggest barrier from your perspective. What scares you the most about selling to government? And you have several options here. If you feel that there is another reason, you can put other, but I'd love to see the results. I see the procurement is winning for now. So I see many of those, so not knowing where to start, and we will be working on that during this bootcamp. Access to decision makers, I'm also going to mention that today, but the procurement wins. So let's give another few minutes for people to respond. If you put other, I'm interested in what it is about, so you can put a comment maybe in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna give another minute, and we're gonna move forward with answering all those. I'll respond to all those things you have mentioned here. You're voting for. So procurement and access to decision makers. Oh, it's, yeah. So compliance, yes, compliance is another thing. Transparency, yes. Okay, so access to decision makers and procurements are winning. I'm gonna move forward to, and we're gonna talk about all those things. So startups are fast and flexible. We talked about it, and we all know that. And public sector is structured and process-driven, and that difference exists for a reason. To understand this better, it helps to understand how the system actually works. So public sector is a multi-stakeholder system. There are policymakers, lawyers, procurement officers, end users, IT, and it's also very there is certain hierarchy to it. It follows defined processes, and there is a strong accountability. So it's not a chaos, it's a system designed to manage public resources responsibly, right? And public systems are designed to be reliable. They need to serve millions of people and do it without the interruption. We don't want the situation when some systems are not working, or like they're changing, and I don't know, for example, benefits are not paid for a month, and then big amount of people are not able to buy food and provide for their kids. So stability here comes first. And there's another very important thing to know about the system, how the budget cycles work. So planning for the next year typically starts in spring, and I'm talking here about when the budget year starts in January and ends in December. I've been there internally, so this is something I will be talking from my own also experience. So now organizations start thinking and planning the budget for 2027. So internally, organizations discuss their needs. The negotiations happen at ministry level after that. So all the organizations under the ministries are putting their needs, and then the ministry decides things how to divide this budget they have. Then the discussions are going across ministries, how much money each wants, and budget negotiations are tough because resources are limited and demand is always exceeds what can be funded. So when this is done, and this is a long process, it starts, as I said, in spring until let's say September, October, it goes in the organization on different levels, and then it goes to the parliament, where the budget is discussed once again. And sometimes some political parties want some more for their ministries, and it's a mess. If you ever witnessed budget negotiations, it's a really nice circus to watch. Sometimes it's crazy. So yeah, and then the budget is approved. So by the time the budget is approved, it's already late in the year, right? It's November, December. At that point, organizations still need to prepare detailed spending plans when the budget is approved and they know how much they will get. The procurement plans, many other internal documents, which also take time. And only once all of this is finalized, the budget is actually released to the organization. So in practice, real spending can usually start the following year, often around February, in best case scenario. Sometimes it's March. From that moment, organizations have to spend the allocated budget within the year. And at the same time, they're already planning for the next one. So let's say in March, you get released the budget for this year and need to start spending and implementing all those things you are planning, but also start thinking what you will need in the next year. So this is important to understand. And here's something that might feel counterintuitive. In many cases, not spending your budget is worse than overspending, because if you don't use your budget, next year you may get less. So what happens in practice is towards the end of the year, especially in November and December, there's a strong pressure to commit and spend budget. This may be a small tip for you. We're not talking about big budgets, but like for some piloting or something, the timing matters a lot. So last months of the year can be a very good moment to, like, look what's there, and maybe a good moments to try selling, because organizations are actively looking for the way to use their remaining budgets. And this also connects directly to procurement, because this is how the purchasing is being made. So at the center of this is procurement. It's a formal process. It's transparent, competitive, which can feel restrictive, but it's also what makes the system fair. And procurement exists for a reason: to ensure fairness, accountability, and protect public money. So it's not designed for speed. And we are already talking about budget and everything. The system is not designed for speed, but it's designed for trust and stability. And this is why timing feels slow. There are multiple approvals, budget cycles, and different legal requirements. So delays are not random, and they are counted and built into the system. But the traditional procurement is a nightmare for both sides, and I've been there. I lived through that. I was preparing different procurements for events, whatever, different things. Also, this Bully Box, this app I told at the beginning, and this meme shows how I actually was feeling while doing so. And this is also the reality for many public servants. Who are starting to look for being more creative at the topic, because they really want the best solutions and not the same provider once again, and not procuring the cheapest option once again. So more and more people and countries are becoming creative. And for example, in Lithuania, we are looking for a way to procure innovative solutions from startups. And traditional innovation procurement methods were not working too well because of very strict regulation that, when you're procuring innovation and you're using innovation procurement method, there needs to be this R&D process, which can take a lot of years sometimes. And in Lithuania, it's quite strict. It's not in other countries. So we looked at what's available, and we saw that there is this procurement method which was already there in the legislative system for 10 years. It's called design contest, which was never used for procuring technology. And we started doing that. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. So, as I've mentioned, procurement is also evolving. We see more innovation challenges, more startup-friendly procurements. European programs and projects are rising. So many things are happening on national level, but also on international level. And we see more and more pilots and sandboxes. So the system is slowly opening up to work better with startups. Talking about the innovation challenges, and here I'm going to show the Lithuanian example. In different countries and different programs, it can look a bit differently. It's a structured innovation process that facilitates the cooperation between public sector and private sector to build digital solutions that solve government challenges. And it has few stages. So at the beginning, the problem from the public sector is being selected. And while looking for those problems for innovation challenges, we're always, and you're going to hear a few in this session, at the end of the session, where we were always looking for something which could be scalable, which could be interested for the private sector to solve, could be like challenging to solve. And then we're transforming the problem into the challenge, where we are changing the narrative, changing the wording, changing the language, and also preparing for the procurement, because the things that how public sector describes things and how regular people hear things, this is very different. So you need this translation. Then running the procurement and selecting the best team and idea. Then both teams from the public sector and private sector are going into pilot development and working together to create the best pilot possible. And this is all being done with a support of different GovTech teams, which support with workshops, support the collaboration between the teams, and then at the end there is a demo day, more like some visibility and scaling if the pilot is successful. There's also specific procurement approaches designed for innovation. The two most important ones are PCP and PPI, so pre-commercial procurement, public procurement of innovation. So pre-commercial procurement is used when a solution doesn't exist yet. The public sector defines a problem, but not the solution. And then multiple companies, often startups, are funded to explore different approaches. At this stage, the government is not buying finished products yet. They are funding the research and development. So for startups, it's a lower risk way to engage because you're not expected to have fully developed product. Then public procurement of innovation comes later. Here the solution already is close to the market. Public sector acts as first buyer and helps to validate and scale the solution. So instead of just developing something, you actually move towards real contracts and implementation. So together, these two approaches create a pathway. PCP helps you develop and test ideas, and PPI helps you scale them. And this is important because traditional procurement was not designed with startups in mind, and these models are. So if you're thinking about entering the market, this could be the kind of mechanism that make it much more accessible than it might seem at the first place. But I already mentioned that in Lithuania, for example, this R&D process is very strictly detailed, and we were looking for another way. And this is where we discovered the design contest, which was previously used in procuring design works in architecture. So when the municipality, let's say, is procuring a school or kindergarten, they don't need to specify that they need to have like 100 windows and this color, 20 doors, and the rooms have to be this big. But like architects can come up with the ideas how the building will work. And what's really nice about this procurement method is that it also not only the company or like the architect or the company in the case of GovTech wins the contract, but also the other best ideas, depending like second, third, fourth, or even fifth place, can get prizes, monetary prizes or piloting prizes. Together with monetary prizes for just submitting the proposal. So this is something which really is useful for the startups. There is also more flexible jury evaluation criteria. And also what's really important, submissions are evaluated through anonymous review process. So the reviewers don't know if it's like big tech company suggesting this solution or it's small startups. So the chances are more equal. And I've mentioned already more and more European programs and projects, so you already heard a bit about GovTech4All, and you'll hear some opportunities right after my presentation and during the next sessions. Also, there are organizations like European Innovation Council, which is less GovTech specific, so they are supporting startups and SMEs, but I know that from time to time they are organizing matchmaking sessions between providers which want to build something or have some solution for the public sector and the public sector officials from around Europe. And also you could use EU funding and tenders portal for tender calls for innovation procurement. And there are many, many more additionally to the national things. So I just explained how the system works, and I want to share some tips and tricks about what works. So the first thing that needs to be changed is the mindset. So instead of frustration, you need to approach this as a strategy. And this is something you will be working on during the next meeting. Because once you understand the system, it becomes much more manageable. So startups that succeed here do a few things consistently. So they start early. They build relationships and they learn how the public sector communicates and makes decisions. They also don't try to win huge contracts immediately, so start small. They start with pilot, proof of concept, and then iterate from there. And this reduces risks on both sides. And very important, persistence is the key. You need to follow up to stay visible and build trust over time. And it's not a one meeting process. So common mistakes are quite predictable from what I already mentioned. So expecting speed, and it's not that you cannot expect speed, like, it cannot happen speedy, because like design contest, and there are some mechanism which we are trying to push and put in place, which makes those processes more less slow, but expecting speed while scaling can be you can prepare for that. Then ignoring how the system works, and trying to to put your own rules on that. Public sector won't allow that. And building too much before validating, this is also very important. So starting small, starting with pilots, starting with building relationships is very, very important. So these are all things to avoid. And one more important point. So many people assume that the public sector is inaccessible. In reality, cold outreach really works, and events are very important. So people in public sector are actually quite eager to learn what is up there, outside of their work. They are not that often meeting people from outside public sector during events. So inviting them to events, speaking to them, presenting to them, like inviting to pitching events, or coming to the events where the public sector is actually present is quite important, and they are eager to learn something more. They really appreciate that, and the potential to learn something it's good. So access is often easier than expected. You just need to learn where the public sector is and how to approach it. So usually it is how it feels at the beginning. So it's very complex, slow, and hard to access. This is all the things we covered with the first slides, with the first Slido. But the reality is much more simpler. It's slower. It can be a slower entry, but the payoff is stronger and long-term. And if you understand the system, you have an advantage. So we're almost at the end of my presentation, but I would love to learn and make it more practical. And I would love to learn where could your solution fit in the public sector? If you already have it, and if you don't have one yet, what would you build? I'm just interested in who is in the room, and if you already maybe have something to offer. So let's take a few minutes to see your thoughts. Oh, I see 9 participants already typing. Mobility and smart cities. Yes, this is a big topic, actually, smart cities. I see process of improvements, optimized procedures, education, AI for procurement. Oh, this is lovely. Ports, making tax. Oh, I see many people have already ideas. Accessibility, digitalizing infrastructure, mobility, tourism, procurements. I'm not able to. Yeah, so we see cities, citizen services, accessibility, mobility, renovation of buildings, AI for citizens, procurement is mentioned many times, rules as code, tech. Really love all the answers. So you already have many topics you would like to work on, and all of them are very important. And healthcare, civic participations, they're all on the top of, we've mentioned where governments is spending. So what else do we have? Helping them implement and create value from AI, automation, open source to remove bias from AI, smart cities again. I see boring technology-based public services. You can name it different ways. Maybe for some it's boring, but it actually, if it solves the problem, it's important. So we have many very good already ideas, and we are happy in GovTech4All to share the opportunities where you can share those ideas and try participating in the procurement. So I see 2 participating still typing. So maybe when they finish, we can move forward, and maybe we're gonna have a few minutes for the questions. platform governments. Okay, so thank you for all those. We will definitely internally in GovTech4All look at those. It's really interesting what you're already working on. So few takeaways, and to summarize, what I wanted to share with you, that this is actually a large opportunity. I've mentioned how big the market is. It works differently from the private market, so you need to understand that. You need to learn those rules, you need to learn the language, but it's easy to learn. It's this system to understand how it works and adapt. And it's often a long-term value. So when you start working with the public sector is one of the most reliable clients there. So it's definitely worth considering. And I already mentioned that, and also Anna did, that in the next session, our partners, Gobe, will help you move from understanding the market to actually building your strategy to enter the market. So this was my last slide. Now